Okay, the computer theory of mind. Today I'm going to talk about the computer theory of mind and juvenile sex offender dysfunction. Um, Computer theory of mind has been around since the 1970s. There has been some work developing that. A lot of cognitive behavioral therapists looked at that model as basic functioning of the human mind, how it functions and also dysfunctions. When you look at belief systems are basically a computer program almost. So today I'm going to try to make a connection between that and causation of sex offender patterns, but one pattern specifically, which is the weak boundary SO I called. But it also gives insight to why the current interventions that are wide scale, why they work. But it also opens the door to new, more refined therapies as well. So what I argue here, there's three specific systems. Within the analogy of the computer functioning, there's three specific systems we should focus on that parallel psychological systems. So an antivirus program, a firewall, and an operating system. So what are these things psychologically? The firewall is the external no. The antivirus is the internal no. And the operating system or programs are the operational yes. So to go back to the firewall, what a firewall is how you filter out decisions, deals from your environment. So people, products you want to buy or not buy, but it's what your own expectations from an environment are. That's a mental firewall. An internal no is your own, what you deny in yourself, what you filter out in your own self and in your own behavior. It could be like an impulse that doesn't serve you long term. Any kinds of things, but in the SO community, it's like a thought interrupter. So that skill parallels specifically with the antivirus. The office, the operational programs. This is that's a proactive, where the no elements, the protective elements, these are protective. They are reactive systems. The operational is more of you're looking for something as opposed to looking to deny something. So and the parallel here is like a social skill program. Those kinds of things are affirmative systems in a computer. They're designed to produce things, whereas these are designed to eliminate and destroy things that you don't want. So to connect this with boundary theory, so this is the boundary between yourself and the world. This is the firewall. So this is how you filter out negative deals, people, these kinds of things to protect your internal state. The office, your Microsoft Office, but your operating system, your value system, your belief system. These are designed to generate positive states, positive things for you. The antivirus is the internal system designed to eliminate negativity. So this parallels personal boundary psychology pretty well. So the question here is, what went wrong in the system to trigger things like attraction to children, attraction to animals, that kind of dysfunctional behavior. So the way I trace back causation is in most sex offenders that are habitual, that there's large-scale patterns, they find a lot of home environmental disruption. And those three common disruptors that I think are extremely relevant are abuse, overprotection, and neglect. And I argue that these systems screw up the firewall, the antivirus, and the operating system. So the external no, the internal no, and how you operate in the world. Once one system is infected, you could say, everything else can get weakened. And when you have in our child, they're especially vulnerable to large-scale systemic failure, which is what I'm arguing happens. So what's happening here? All these systems are getting compromised. Abuse can influence the antivirus, the Office, can influence the firewall. So if somebody's beating you every day or constantly tearing you down, what this is by force you're forcing negativity into the child, and so with time his ability to resist the external environment can be compromised if they deal with it passively. What also can happen is overprotection can affect the firewall, but in an indirect way. So by constantly sheltering, by constantly protecting the child from the environment, his ability to resist an negative external situation is weakened. So he becomes, like we could say, like a mama's boy, they would say in colloquial terms. But what this really is somebody who has weak skin, has thin skin, and they will attract negativity to them. So it's either by force or by indirection, by not allowing this boundary to develop, the firewall to develop. Once they're in the environmental situation, they're almost very vulnerable to it. So this is almost like, a lot of times they're like a computer without a firewall getting on the internet. So they're very vulnerable to viruses, as we could say, either their own internal ones or ones that come from the environment. So a bully is like negativity being pushed into the child, into the student, and if they don't have high self-esteem, they don't have a sense of self, then that boundary is going to be violated and that firewall is going to be compromised, and you threaten like systemic failure here. So Microsoft Office, so we go back to the operating system, how this person gets what they want. This is weakened, and it can be anything. If neglect is what's happening, then the child may not have a role model to develop social skills, self-management skills, to role model. It could be relationships, it could be friendships, anything, but their operating system is weakened. Abuse and overprotection can weaken this as well. If you're always doing something for somebody and you never have to do anything for yourself, then you become dependent. And overprotection can influence one's own social skills. So you can come into a relationship and expect with you can you see the sex offenders who have mothers who have been very overprotective or sheltering, and they seek that out in their girlfriends. Well, I mean, that's not necessarily like a healthy adult relationship. So if they have expectations to be mothered and cared for, then that's a negative influence on their own ability to act in the world. Antivirus, his own internal delay of gratification. Any impulse, he's saying no to himself. That can be weakened if somebody's constantly serving your every need and whim. That can be weakened through inability to recover from an abuse situation. So, if you're being constantly told you're worthless and you believe it, and that means that you let a virus in your system and you're letting it perpetuate and you're not deleting it. So it influences one's sense of self and an environment. So if not corrected, you threaten. You reach a threshold where you can get large. A system can be compromised. It's almost like a computer is frozen, or a a computer is dramatically slowed down, you could say, then one or all of these systems have been eliminated or greatly reduced in their effectiveness. And when you in a children's situation, you can usually trace that back to the most influential environment, which is the home. So this is what I would argue is what a compromised system looks like, and they're basically vulnerable to the world, and it's not a good situation. So what I argue in this situation is you get massive distortions. So you could have so low self-esteem that you're attracted to children. I mean, to a normal person, this would not be even conceivable, but in their situation, that's the cognition. Attraction to animals out of fear of failure. Again, hard to relate to, but when the system is completely weakened and completely, you don't have the normal protective mechanisms, there's large-scale worldview distortions. Another thing that I trace back to as far as obsession is it could be almost a defense mechanism against brain atrophy and depression. So the brain is naturally pleasure-seeking. You know, the no matter what your state, even if you have bad psychological maintenance systems, you still have biological triggers for pleasure. So that could be food, or in the sex offender's situation, sex. So food and sex are the biological triggers for pleasure, and this could be a defense mechanism. So it's almost like if you're sick, you start craving health food, or you start craving orange juice. This could be his dysfunctional way of dealing with his depression. So this is why you could say that learning social skills, learning self-maintenance skills, learning emotional management, we're not sure, or at least the theorists aren't sure, why this reduces sex offense behavior, but argue when you fix the system, sexual attraction returns to normal levels and through to normal groups as well. So at this level, you can start thinking about repair. Once you understand that these are the specific systems that got compromised, then you can start thinking about how to fix them. And this is what a lot of programs do already, but you go back to social skills learning. You go back to things like thought stoppers. That's an antivirus system, but also learning behavior skills, learning personal assertiveness. These can help an external know, a certain immunity from the environment, from environmental negativity. And so once you rebuild these systems, you reduce the dysfunction, and you can reduce, in theory, the cognitive distortions. The cognitive distortions should be dealt with directly, but what programs have found, what studies have found is, even if you address the dysfunction specifically, so if the child has deviant thoughts about children or animals, even if you address those impulses directly, it's not effective unless you address the other systems, unless you address the social skills, unless you address the antivirus or the internal and external node systems, then you don't have large effectiveness. So holistic programs, programs that tend to deal with whole system psychology, they're generally more effective, but this is why I argue that that's the case, because the sexual deviance is almost like a side effect of a compromised psychological system. So this hopefully gives some insight into what's going wrong, and in the future I'll just continue more with how to treat it and also how to better diagnose. Thanks for listening.